We would not have been able to pull this off without the support and sponsorship. I've mentioned several of our key sponsors. I just want to mention a few more. 511.org, Advanced Project Delivery, James O'Brien, who helps us tremendously with things like our crossing guard program, Alta Planning, Mike Jones, who will pick up the phone for anything that Marin needs, CSW Stuber-Stroh, Al Cornwell, who's been a terrific partner along with Dietz Strove to us over the years, Farron Piers. You saw Bob Grandy pitch in this morning. Gus Corey of Corey Consulting, Lyft, Marin Clean Energy, and we have Don that's going to speak to us here in a few minutes. The Marin School of Environmental Leadership did a great video on electric vehicles. They're over here in the corner outside. Marin Villages, thank them very much for participating today. The Metropolitan Transportation Commission, the North Bay Leadership Council, Cynthia Murray, who's always a supporter of transportation here in Marin, Social Bikes, Starship, WMH, Sean is here, and they've done a lot of great work for us. They're working on that bike ped facility down in the Corte Madera area, and also Zagster. So again, I want to thank our sponsors for contributing today to make this a cost-effective and pleasant experience for everyone. You know, I'm going to introduce our next introducer. And that's Leslie Alden, who's sitting right here. She's a mover and shaker down in the southern Marin area as an aide, principal aide to Supervisor Kate Sears, who sends her regrets and wishes she could have been here today. Leslie's going to introduce our next speaker, Don Weisz with the Marin Clean Energy. So Leslie.
Thank you, Diane. Yes, my boss, Supervisor Kate Sears, can't be here this afternoon. As you can see, she's outstanding in the field. She is the one in the very front there, just over the E in MCE. But I am delighted to be here on her behalf and to make this introduction of today's final speaker. Don Weisz is the founding Chief Executive Officer of Marin Clean Energy, which, in case you did not know, is the very first community choice energy program in the state of California and the first one in the nation to focus on procuring 100% renewable energy. And I hope you are all deep green customers, but I digress. Let me back up a little bit. Well over a decade ago, in the early aughts, maybe long before most of us had even heard the phrase climate change, some very smart people were very aware of the looming impacts of a rapidly warming planet. They also knew that the main cause of global warming was greenhouse gas emissions. But they didn't say, gee, this is a global problem and there's really not anything we can do here locally. Well, this is Marin after all. Instead, an analysis was done of the sources of these emissions in our county, and it may surprise you to know that about 1/3 of our greenhouse gas emissions here come from the electricity that we use in our homes and our businesses. This is the intersection, however, of Don Weisz's world and the transportation world. About 60% of those emissions come from the transportation sector. In looking at those percentages and knowing that transforming our penchant for single occupancy combustion engine vehicles was going to be a tall order here in Marin, don't forget not too long ago we saw Hummers on our narrow streets. This savvy group turned their attention to the energy we use to power the rest of our lives, if not our automobiles. So Don Weisz began exploring a groundbreaking concept called community choice back in 2004 when she was a principal planner with the County of Marin. In fact, her small office was just down the hall from my small office at the Civic Center. Now, barely 7 years after Marin Clean Energy first began serving a small customer base of 6,500 here in Marin, Dawn, as Chief Executive Officer, is responsible for the vision, the strategy, and the leadership at MCE. Under her watch, MCE has brought renewable energy to more than 250,000 customers in 24 communities around the Bay Area. MCE has entered into agreements that have more than doubled the amount of renewable energy procured for customers, exceeded California's renewable portfolio standard, and achieved substantial greenhouse gas reductions to help local communities reach their AB 32 targets. Dawn speaks regularly at energy-related conferences. She's been a guest lecturer at UC Berkeley, the National American Planning Association, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, just to list a few. She's received awards from the EPA, the U.S. Department of Energy, the Power Association of Northern California, all back in the day when science was real and there were no alternative facts. Marin Clean Energy's success lies squarely with Dawn and that visionary group of Marin County leaders. That success has engendered, I think, a broad recognition that we can make changes at the local level that are paradigm shifts in how we live our lives, not just for our betterment here, but for the benefit of the entire planet. Since we've already harvested the low-hanging fruit, electrifying our homes and our businesses, we can now turn to the slightly more ambitious goal and visionary goal of electrifying transportation. And for all of you who have hung in all afternoon and stayed for this last bit on a Friday afternoon, I know that she's going to renew your faith in what we can do at the local level with an electrifying presentation. As we move Marin forward in so many ways and on so many fronts, I have no doubt that she will give you a great deal to think about. Please give a warm welcome to Dawn Weisz.
Well, that was a very kind introduction, Leslie. Thank you very much. And it's such an honor to be here. I'm really excited to talk about this topic. It's really exciting for us as we've focused on energy for so many years to be able to really talk in such an in-depth way about the nexus between transportation and electricity. So with that, I'm going to jump in here. And I wanted to start off with just a little bit about MCE. I'm curious if I could get a show of hands. How many of you have heard of MCE or Marin Clean Energy before today? All right, that's good. How many of you know about the deep green 100% renewable option with MCE? Awesome. Okay, that's great. So it sounds like this is a pretty informed crowd. And so just to kind of go backwards, when we looked at launching MCE, really the driving reason was to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We had done a greenhouse gas inventory for the county of Marin back in 1999. We were looking for ways to reach a pretty aggressive target to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And it was looking pretty hard and pretty expensive until this idea of community choice came around. And it was enabled by legislation that allows local governments to become the power purchasers for their communities. We thought that sounded like a pretty good idea. We talked to PG&E to see if they could get a greener option to us, and they weren't able to offer that. And so we went forward with launching the MCE program. It took about 7 years to study and explore it and launch it. But this is the reason that it was launched, was really to focus on getting more renewable energy onto the grid, getting stable and competitive rates for energy in our community, and also local economic and workforce benefits. And last but not least, energy efficiency, where we've really turned to spend a lot of time on that lately. So, in Marin, we're really grateful to have the Marin Climate and Energy Partnership, which creates climate action plans for many of our local jurisdictions, and also offers the annual greenhouse gas inventory report for each of the communities in Marin. Since 2005, countywide transportation emissions have decreased about 9%. And this is due to the Pavley bill and the the low carbon fuel standard, increasing fuel economies for passenger and light duty vehicles. So we're seeing a lot of success in that area, and that's exciting. In addition, we've seen a 66% reduction reduction in total countywide emissions as of 2014, and those are going to continue to go down. And what's exciting about this, I think through MCE, we've been able to redirect a revenue stream that exists in every community in California. It's a revenue stream that comes from energy customers. Everyone's an energy customer unless you're living off the grid. And we've redirected all the generation costs from customers into our program, and we've been able to get more renewables into the portfolio to replace the fossil power that was in there. And so really, at the flip of a switch, we were able to redirect where folks were getting their energy from without changing while keeping their costs competitive, and that's resulted in a very fast reduction in countywide emissions that will continue to go down. The next thing I wanted to talk about is how we're creating greater access to, how there is greater access to transportation, and that can reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but it requires infrastructure and lifestyle changes. And I remember when we were looking to launch MCE, we were looking for ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We looked at what Portland had accomplished, and they had made significant strides in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but it had taken a big investment in their transportation system. And we were concerned about the costs associated with that. But what we're seeing now is a real renaissance of new opportunities in the transportation sector to get at that other big chunk of our greenhouse gas emissions that's tied to transportation. It's even bigger than the electric sector. But I think that the problem that we face here in Marin is that the high cost of living in the Bay Area and in Marin, and the lack of transportation in more cost-sensitive areas means that autonomous vehicles or single occupancy vehicles are used more often than other modes of transportation, like transit, biking, or walking. So the result is that alternative fuel vehicles, especially electric vehicles, are becoming more popular in our area. So electrifying the grid is an important opportunity, I think, for greenhouse gas reductions, and it creates a real nexus for what MCE is doing. A little bit about vehicle electrification. California is actually leading the nation in electric vehicle adoption, with 5 out of every 1,000 registered vehicles being a plug-in vehicle. So I think that's a pretty good number, 5 out of 1,000. It's a good start anyway, it's a good starting point. California actually has a little less than half of the United States electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids. A new state law in California requires that by 2050, about 15% of all light-duty vehicles must be electric or fuel cell vehicles. So I think there's going to be a lot of progress in this area over the next 5 years in particular. Over the years, the power grid in California has become more heavily focused on renewables. In MCE's service territory, the presence of our options has provided customers with a choice of renewables. We have a 50% renewable option called light green, the 100% renewable option called deep green, and then the local solar program, which is for folks that want their energy tied to a solar project right here in our service territory. It's actually in Nevada at the Cooley Quarry site. We've also seen an increase in PG&E's options for solar and renewable energy. They introduced the Solar Choice option last year, and they've been increasing the renewable content in their load. So I don't know if you're able to see the legend on this, but basically the dark green tall bars are our deep green program, and you can see in 2016 a few additional options were added for customers. But it's great to see the grid is getting greener because vehicles are going to be starting to use what's on the grid. And the grid, the electric vehicles are only as greenhouse gas free as the fuel that's used to charge them. So the fuel that's being used is really important. So MCE worked with a group of students at Presidio Graduate School who were developing potential pilot programs involving electric vehicles. Marin Transit Authority, Golden Gate Transit, and Transportation Authority of Marin worked with MCE to secure funding through Federal Transit Authority, Measure A, Measure B, and a BACMed grant, that's Bay Area Air Quality Management District, to purchase 2 new electric buses. So that's quite a coalition. A lot of effort went into getting getting these 2 new buses up and online. They will be replacing 2 40-foot diesel vehicles and will be taking advantage of MCE's electric service on Golden Gate property. So we're really excited about that. The SMART train will connect Sonoma to Marin from Larkspur to Cloverdale, and that's going to create a lot of opportunities as well for folks. Marin County also has 105 public fast charge and private EV stations, meaning that the county has more charging stations than gas stations, and that's the county itself. So we're excited about that. And the last thing I'll say about the SMART train is that more than 75% of commuters in the North Bay travel within or between Sonoma and Marin to get to work. And so the SMART train, we think, is going to help eliminate the strain and the aging highways and roads and clear up some congestion. And we're really excited because the MCE office is literally right in front of the SMART train. We get to hear it all the time, and it's very cute. It's a lot of fun to have that nearby, and I know it's going to really increase the vibrancy of the local communities as people can get around. The Walk Bike Marin initiative began through a $25 million federal grant to fund the non-motorized transportation pilot program. This is a really exciting initiative, and it's provided funding for the primary networks such as the Sir Francis Drake sidewalk and the bridgeway to the ferry path, as well as improving bicycle parking and educating residents. Education programs include classes on how to repair your bike, safety campaigns, and community walking maps. The Golden Gate Ferry also offers Marin and San Francisco residents an easy way to connect to the city without using their cars. Residents can take bikes on the ferry, as you probably know, and make their daily commute that much easier and add a little bit of exercise to their day as well. So a lot of efforts are underway. The last one I'll mention is the Go Time Marin was established in 2013 with the Marin County Commuter Toolkit to help businesses build a successful employee commute program. That program outlines who employee commuting or which employee commuting alternatives are good for businesses and the environment, and they help achieve the state goals of reducing vehicle miles traveled. There's also been a lot of efforts in our region around biodiesel. So the county is in the midst of a pilot to test renewable diesel in the fleet. They are currently purchasing and using about 23,000 gallons of renewable diesel at the Civic Center station. And the estimated savings are about 161 metric tons of CO2. The pilot's going really well, and they're considering expanding to all diesel tanks. The potential savings would be about 500 tons from a full rollout, so that's really exciting. Also, the public vehicles are making a big dent. So the county fleet currently has 1 full EV, 5 PHEV vehicles, and 69 hybrids, which is about 21% of the total county fleet. So the county's often really been a leader on green initiatives, and this is just another example of that. And then I think that I wanted to just shift gears a little bit and talk about, why should we care about transportation? What difference does it really make? I think, choosing an electric service is not an insignificant decision. It really impacts the collective efforts. If everybody makes a decision to green their transportation and to green their supply of energy, collectively we can make a really tremendous impact. And what you can see here is that 122,000 metric tons of greenhouse gas have been eliminated from MCE's power supply just in 4 short years. And we've grown a lot since the early years of MCE, and so the impact, once we get final numbers for 2015 and 2016, are going to be more than double that. So the impacts are not insignificant. And choosing an electric service is not insignificant. Taking fossil fuel cars off the road is really the next step to get us to where we're all wanting to be. So I want to talk a little bit about our goals briefly related to the energy that can be used to feed all of our vehicles. And I want to say a little bit about what's happening on the grid, sort of big picture. So we have seen so much solar come onto the grid in California in the last few years that it's actually creating some unanticipated problems, some unanticipated consequences for the grid operator. What's happening is that you have so much supply coming onto the grid in the middle of the day that in some cases, they're having to curtail renewable energy. They're having to turn off some of the solar that's coming onto the system in the middle of the day. So they're looking for ways to create load. That is why electric vehicles could really create an important complement to the renewable energy that's on the grid. If we can find ways to suck up that energy in the middle of the day, we're going to be able to get more solar built in California. Right now, the California system operator that manages the grid for the state is saying, hold on, we've got way too much solar. And what happens is when the sun goes down and everyone comes home and starts cooking and turning on their lights and their air conditioning, or there's a huge spike in demand. And the only thing, or the best option right now for the system operator to serve that need is with peaker plants or with fossil energy. And that's not what we want. And what makes it worse is when folks come home not knowing about this problem and plug in their vehicles. Because that's what folks think to do when they get home and they've got an electric vehicle. So we have a big job cut out for us to make some changes to when people are charging, and to try and create incentives and make it easy for folks to charge in the middle of the day when we have a lot of solar supply on the system. And we are looking for ways to also to shift load from the middle of the day to those hours in the evening. And battery storage is a potential solution for that. If you can get a battery that can store up energy in the middle of the day and then expend that energy in the evening hours, that can help solve the problem too. And there are even some pilots going on to use electric vehicle batteries for that purpose and be able to automatically charge and discharge them to help stabilize the grid. So those are some of the things that are going on behind the scenes regarding energy supply. Our energy supply is currently 75% carbon-free if you're getting the light green option. And by 2025, it's going to be 100% carbon-free. If you're interested in charging your vehicle with 100% carbon-free energy today, you just choose the deep green option. And that's an easy way to zero out your carbon footprint quickly. This slide gives you an overview of electric vehicle rates. So MCE has electric vehicle rates, as does PG&E. And the reason why, if you have an electric vehicle, the reason why you might want to get onto an electric vehicle rate is because you can save a little money, particularly if you're willing to charge in times in the night when there's extra power on the grid and avoid charging in the early evening hours. So we have some programs to help with that. If you have an electric vehicle or you're considering an electric vehicle, you can call MCE, and we're happy to give you information and kind of help you figure out what's the right rate for you. And then I also want to tell you a little bit about some things that MCE is doing to help solve the grid problems I mentioned, to get more electric vehicles onto the road, and to help get information and tools out to our customers. So the first is we're working to get an electric vehicle and solar carport structure at our headquarters, which is in downtown San Rafael, between Tamalpais it's on Tamalpais between 5th and Mission, right next to the railroad tracks there. And what you can see here is a rendering of what this electric vehicle solar carport structure is going to look like once it's finished at the end of the year here. And it will be open to the public, so if you're looking for a place to charge your vehicle in the middle of the day in San Rafael, you're welcome to check out what we'll have there. And then we have, and I should say we're going to have 10 public level 2 charging stations. These will be 100% powered by the solar at the facility there, and it'll be offsetting some of the building usage. The solar will be offsetting some of the usage in the building, which is great as well. And then we also have a smart charge program that provides incentives for customers that are willing to allow some flexibility in when their charging happens. And this is to solve the problem I was mentioning of trying to avoid those evening hours and really trying to make the charging happen when there's extra energy on the grid, the middle of the day when the sun is brightest, and then in the middle of the night when no one else is using power. Those are good times to charge. And we have an incentive program for folks that are willing to be part of that program. So please reach out to us if you have an electric vehicle and you don't already have this type of system. We have some incentives to make it easy and affordable, and over time it'll really pay off for you, and it'll pay off for the grid by helping to create the right patterns. The incentive that we offer is $150 towards the purchase of the equipment. And you can use this to purchase a juice plug from eMotorworks that will enable their level 2 charging equipment. So let us know if you have questions about that. So just in closing, I wanted to say that we've been fortunate to have great partnerships with so many agencies here in Marin, and I know that we're going to continue to work with the local agencies here to provide more sustainable models of transportation, and whether it's increasing access to public transit, vehicle electrification and infrastructure, and a cleaner and more renewable grid, and promoting alternative fuels and modes of transit. MCE is really committed to do our part to help reduce the biggest sector of greenhouse gas emissions in Marin County while continuing to support a vibrant and sustainable Marin. And we're so grateful to have been able to be part of this event today, which is so important in setting the stage for the future. So thank you, and I'm happy to take questions if that would be helpful. Yeah. We've got one there. Yes. Hi.
Policymakers to incentivize our commercial building owners to have charging stations?
Yeah, great question. Well, there are some incentive dollars out there for electric vehicle charging stations. So you can certainly reach out to us if you know of a commercial building owner that would be interested. I think that there is likely to be a lot more on that front soon. We are looking at doing a hotspot map over the next month or so that tells where are the most opportune places on the grid to install charging infrastructure, and overlaying that with where there's the highest need or the highest amount of people during the day. I think that commercial charging is a really important part of the solution, because we really need people charging in the middle of the day wherever possible, rather than just doing it when they get home. So we're open to ideas on that, and hopefully there will be new incentive dollars available within the next year or so. Any other questions? All right. Oh, Leslie.
How can we electrify Marin County? I mean, really do it. Oh.
Yeah.
I'll do this again. How can we, as a county, as a community, really electrify the entire county so that we are powering everything? We're moving off of fossil fueled cars.
Yeah, well, I think that I think that transition is beginning. And I think that if we do nothing, it might happen by itself over a very long period of time. But I think there's a lot we can do to accelerate that change. And it's a lot of different pieces. So I think, each of us needs to pick a piece of the puzzle and focus in on it, work hard and get it done. I think that electrifying buses is really important. Getting people from the buses to where they live is really important, and that could be through a lot of the technologies that we heard about today. And then, because we have so much single-use vehicle reliance in Marin County, I think a lot of the shift is going to be towards electric vehicles. There's a really interesting program happening up in Sonoma County that we're looking to replicate here, and I'll say a little bit about it. After MCE launched in 2010, a few other community choice programs have been springing up around the state, and one of them, the Sonoma Clean Power Program, launched an electric vehicle campaign where they actually went out to car dealerships that were selling electric vehicles and said, well, how much, if we could guarantee you 100 people will buy an electric vehicle, how much of a discount could you offer? And it turned out that there was actually, the dealers were very interested in getting these vehicles moving, and they offered about an $8,000 discount per customer. I think part of the reason is that they see higher range vehicles coming down the pike soon, and they want to make sure that these current vehicles on the lot don't get stranded. So they were really incentivized to get those vehicles off the lot, and it resulted in over 350 vehicles within about a 3-month period getting sold to Sonoma Clean Power customers. And one of the most exciting statistics I think about this program is that over half of those customers were low-income customers. And I think that's an area in Marin County where we have seen both with solar installations and electric vehicle purchases, it's not happening in our disadvantaged communities. There's not as much access to green energy or green transportation. So with the exception of, public transit has always been more heavily used there. But I think that we need to be thinking broadly about solutions that offer these opportunities for a greener, carbon-free lifestyle to everyone in our community. So I'm interested in seeing if we can replicate that program down here. All right, thanks. Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you very much. Dawn, I must say that we are very, very proud of the work of Marin Clean Energy and the innovation that they started for the state, really, that was generated here in Marin. So thank you, Dawn. And we want to continue to coordinate with Dawn. We have a very exciting electric vehicle program at TAM, and we've been able to make great strides in fleet replacement vehicles, contributions to electric transit. Very proud of the more publicly available electric vehicle charging stations than gas stations now. Marin is still the second county in the state in terms of owning the most electric and hybrid electric vehicles, second only to Santa Clara. So we're very proud of keeping that going. I'm going to turn this over to my chair, but I just wanted to recognize the great staff at TAM who've put this together today. I want to thank all of you who have stuck around to the end of our workshop. Our Citizens Oversight Committee is strongly in attendance here today, so thank you and welcome to them. And then I would be remiss in not mentioning the folks that have really helped pull this together. My staff at TAM, Molly Graham, our Public Information Officer, Derek McGill, our Planning Manager, and then finally, this would not have happened without us bringing on board Marnie Primer of Connected Consulting, who helped pull these great panels together here today. And we look forward to a lot of ongoing conversation about this, whether it's microtransit that takes people from our smart stations to some of our employment sites, whether it's our bike share program that's going to also provide options for people. We have a lot of vision that's been created today, and we appreciate all the speakers and all of your thoughts.